All right, what's up, fellas, ladies, gentlemen, children of all ages? Wake Up Mintzy, presented to you by the fine folks of Dude Wipes. And we've got a lot of messes to clean up because the college football playoff rankings are coming out tonight, and I don't know what the hell is going to happen. Drinking some Stella Blue this morning, the only way to wake up. Thank you, Big Cat. Check out the new Miss Peach's flavors out. Miss Peach is such an icon. She's got her own coffee flavor even. And we're in here Tuesday morning. A lot of stuff to get to. I've done a lot of good stuff in my life, and I've done a lot of stupid stuff. The parlay with Quentin Johnson last night, got to be among the worst. I think he might have the worst wide receiver game I've ever seen in NFL history last night. We're joined off the top by Peter Burns of SEC Network. We are going to talk some college football with him. What's up, Peter? How are you this morning?
I'm doing well, man. I'm trying to figure out what the hell happens a little bit later tonight. By the way, the Dude Wipes, I got a 7-year-old and 5-year-old as well, too. It's like family wipes. Like those things are seriously legit. So thanks for getting me on these things.
Yeah, it's a crazy. The thing is, like, it's an amazing product. Like, I would have never thought to like reinvent the toilet paper thing, but it's like once you used them once, it's just such an upgrade. It's
Dude, as long as they're flushable, that's the whole deal. Like, it's just like I got to buy the flushable ones, and they are. So again, here I am. You know, I'm just a product whore for you here on Wake Up Mintzy.
There you go. Thank you, Peter. Well, Peter, been holding it down at SEC Network for 11 years. Been enjoying seeing you on the road a good bit this year. I want to just jump right into it. There's so much to get into. We can start on the playoff front. I mean, all hell broke loose last weekend. This SEC this year, nobody can win on the road. We've seen double-digit favorites get knocked off left and right all year. Ole Miss at Florida, then Bama at Oklahoma. And now, when you look at this committee situation, Tennessee, the biggest beneficiary for sure. They're obviously in if they beat Vandy. You know, Indiana caught a break there even though they got blown out. But, like, what the hell you think is going to happen tonight?
I mean, think about the Indiana. I want to start with that, even though I'm an SEC guy. Think about the freaking vibe check for Indiana. Like, going into that game, Mintzy, against Ohio State, the vibes were high. Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, like they were an 8. Then they get off to that 7-0 start, and they get that fourth down stop. And, I mean, I'm like, they're on top of the world. They're thinking, hey, we got it. By the end of the day, they got their ass whooped by Ohio State. It had 157 yards of total offense, and a lot of that was in garbage time at that point. So then you're thinking they're completely out. Right? You're thinking with how many SEC squads are in, so their vibes were terrible. And then all of a sudden you see shit that happens between Florida and Ole Miss. You see A&M and Auburn. You see Oklahoma taking a belt to the ass of Alabama, and you're thinking, all right, well, they're clearly back in. That's how quickly it can change. And, I mean, again, I love it. I mean, I know it's been bad for the SEC, but just the fact that every single weekend I can tune in and be like, I don't know what the hell is going to happen. It's the best college football season that we've had since 2007.
Look, I love it too, except for what happened in Gainesville, Florida. And we can touch on that here. We're going to get through everything. This Ole Miss thing, I mean, I've been through a lot of pain as an Ole Miss fan through the years, but just the cycle of this year, I was like numb after the Kentucky loss, and then I was with you in Baton Rouge, and like, yeah. I mean, that was whatever that voodoo magic was that night. I mean, I still don't see how LSU won other than the fact that it was in Death Valley. And then I was so beat up after the LSU game. I was like literally just like heartbroken, resigned to it. You know, didn't even buy in after Oklahoma win. I was like, whatever. And then they killed Arkansas, and I was like, okay, maybe if they beat.
I'm ready to get my heart broken again, and it did.
Yeah, but then the Georgia week, I talked myself all the way in. I took Ole Miss at 35-1 to win the title because I was like, oh, if they beat Georgia, they're going to be 10-1. We have the best weekend I've ever had at Ole Miss in my 25 years of going there. The Georgia weekend with Barstool Show and Ole Miss killing Georgia and everything that went with it, only to just get gutted in the swamp at a game that there's a lot to look back on. Look, Florida deserved to win. I'm not making excuses. Like, Ole Miss couldn't convert short yardage, dart through those picks. I mean, Florida's a different team with Lagway. They've improved. I give them all the credit in the world for all that. But just the cycles of what happened with Ole Miss and the amount of money that was spent on the roster, I mean, this one's extremely tough to swallow.
Explain this to me, right? Explain this to me. And I think Lane is a genius. I think Lane's done a hell of a job in Oxford, right? But you go back and look at a box score, and sometimes you can just pull whatever shit out of a box score you want and make it fit whatever narrative. But here's the one that I couldn't figure out. 35 rushes in that game, right? 16 of them were Jackson Dart, and some of those weren't designed rushes. They were scrambles. 11 of them went to a wide receiver. 6 of them went to J.J. Pegues, and only 4 of them went to a running back. Like, they ran the ball 35 times, and only 4 times they gave the ball to someone who legitimately practices as a running back all season long. That's the part that I'm trying to figure out how that's the game plan going forward.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and I won't go. This is going to not just be an all Ole Miss show because we got a lot to get to, but I'll give this the brief thing. The Ulysses Bentley saga this year has been the weirdest thing I've ever seen because he was a solid 1-2 punch last year with Judkins, and then the plan was, and I get why, I know they missed Judkins in short yardage, and you could see those games. Obviously, that was a loss, but there was a lot of stuff behind the scenes there. I understand why he didn't end up coming back. I get it. The Bentley thing, no one can understand it. I mean, they didn't play him all year, and then the LSU game, he gets in and busts a 50-yarder on 4th and 1.
Right for the jump.
And it looked like he was going to get the job back, and he had a touchdown against Georgia. He had like 13 for 28. And there's something going on, I think, with the running backs coach Kevin Smith and him. I don't know. I don't know. There's just something going on there with the Bentley thing, and it just doesn't make sense. But you're playing a game to make the playoffs, and you put your number 5 receiver and punt returner at running back who hadn't taken a snap at running back the whole year over Bentley, who had a good career at SMU and did well last year. Look, Lane said it was nothing personal against Bentley. It was just a decision, but it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me, and the fan base is just – there's been a free Bentley thing's been a thing the whole year, and nobody understands it. And
I'll be honest with you, even with all of that, right, despite the loss to Kentucky, despite the loss to LSU on the last play, I mean, LSU never led in regulation. And you ran into one of the hottest teams in the country in Florida. I still, if you're looking at 3 lost teams, I'd put Ole Miss ahead of Alabama, and I'd put Ole Miss ahead of South Carolina. Like, if chaos ensues and you have to have a 3-loss team, which, by the way, if you go back and look at the history of the college football playoff rankings over the last 10 seasons that we had it, there had been a lot of years where a 3-loss team would have actually made the top 12. So it's not out of the realm of possibility it can happen. I'm still picking Ole Miss as to being the top SEC 3-loss team as opposed to Bama or as opposed to South Carolina.
Well, the Ole Miss does have that 27-3 head-to-head. Like, Ole Miss has 2 of the best wins. The road win 27-3 at South Carolina and the 28-10 win over Georgia are like 2 of the best wins you can have. But, man, you got that Kentucky loss. I know it's September, but that one has not aged well. And then you lost as a favorite. I don't know. I mean, it's like you said.
Right? You were competitive in those losses. Like Oklahoma kicked Alabama's ass, right? I mean, and Ole Miss kicked South Carolina's ass. So, I mean, both of those teams that you're compared to in a 3-loss deal, both of them had one game in which they didn't even show up. And you could even argue about Alabama that Vanderbilt dominated Alabama. The final score is not indicative of how Diego Pavia just absolutely slapped Alabama around in that game. So, again, there were 2 games in which South Carolina and Alabama didn't show up. Ole Miss had games they didn't play well, but they never laid an unbelievable egg and got their ass whooped.
Yeah, the Kentucky. It's just the only. I agree with what you're saying, but the Kentucky home loss they're not even making a bowl. It's just
you're down bad, buddy. You're down.
Hell yeah, I'm down bad. I mean, God bless, man. I'd already, I bought in. I made the futures bet. I was already thinking about that playoff home game, December 21st. Oh, dude, I'm just crushing. I'm Peter. I'm headed to the Egg Bowl too. I'm doing Thanksgiving in the Delta. And I'm still going to the Black Friday Egg Bowl. Jackson Dart deserves a great senior day. I don't know how motivated. I mean, it's still a rivalry game. I know Ole Miss is crushed. Everything I'm hearing is how hurt everybody is in the athletic department. So I'm not going to be laying 25.5 just knowing that. But State's terrible. But, hey, I'm still going to look. It's impossible to give moral victory speeches after last week. But I will say, I've been an Ole Miss fan a long time. And there's been a lot of 3-9 and 4 and 8 years. And you're looking at a stretch where Lane goes 10-2, 8-4, 10-2, 9-3, and we're acting like the sky's falling. I mean, we've come a long way to get to this point.
My question on that going forward is not just an Ole Miss thing; it's all of college football. It's same thing with Deion out in Colorado. Now that they lost that game to Kansas and they're out of it, what happens when everybody pushed their chips into the Grove Collective or pushed their collective money in and said, "Hey, we're going all in. Like we're burning the boats. This is the last dance." How many of those guys, when it doesn't pay off to a college football playoff berth, are just like, all right, I did it. I don't don't call me next time and try to get that money. I think everybody was in punch drunk this first year. What happens if it doesn't pay off? That's kind of what I want to see the next iteration of college football and how that plays out.
Yeah, no, that's my curiosity too. The Ole Miss front on next year, at least I really liked what we've seen about Austin Simmons. And so I think you got a quarterback you can gamble on and roll with and maybe not have to spend big in the portal there. And so maybe you can use the rest of the money for the roster. But anyway, that's getting ahead of it. Other college football stuff, bunch of stuff to get into this week. The anarchy stuff that can get caused. It's this Tennessee game in Nashville. Vandy's an 11-point dog, but nobody's winning on the road. We've seen Vandy pull upsets. Look, LSU controlled that game against Vandy, but still not a bad effort by Vandy. They lost by 7 on the road in Death Valley. They were in the game, most of the time. I wouldn't say, Vandy's got a puncher's chance in Nashville against Tennessee. What do you think?
Yeah, because one of the things, too, is that, Tennessee has an engine that misfires offensively, right? Sometimes it works, and when it works, damn, it's good. Nico is rolling. The wide receivers are making catches, and Dylan Sampson, who I believe should be, if he has a big game, I think he should be invited to New York City along with Ashton Genty and Travis Hunter. But more than likely, that's not going to happen. My whole deal there is that, you're talking about two different things. One, somebody going to Williams-Brice or Jordan-Hare or Death Valley, that's 100,000, 85,000 people going crazy. I mean, you're talking about, 25,000 or whatever the capacity is at Vandy right now. That's a
Tennessee home game probably too, right?
Yeah. I mean, at least normally, traditionally it would be. But I think this year now Vandy has made it a point that they're actually worth a damn, that students they're making sure that they don't sell those tickets to other people right now. But again, Vandy is a bad matchup for Tennessee, right? Because you look at it and go, all right, if all of a sudden you're playing kind of keep away 4 corners and they're methodical in the football and you're only going to get 8 drives as opposed to more, do you trust Tennessee? Tennessee more than likely is going to be a college football playoff team, and I don't trust them. I mean, I have trust issues right now with the Vols, and they're going to have to show me something before I believe, oh yeah, that's a team from the SEC that can actually win a national championship.
Yeah, no, I think that, when you look at what could happen this week, and there's a rivalry week, a lot of underdogs got shots this week. That's what rivalry week is all about. But the Vandy beating Tennessee is the domino that can really cause chaos. That's the specific one. You look at some of the other ones, like Indiana's going to smoke Purdue. They need to run it up. They're a 28-point favorite. There's no chance they'll lose. The other interesting ones, Haynes King for Georgia Tech. I don't know what his status is right now about that at Georgia game. It's a night game Saturday night, but Georgia's had a tendency to play these real bad first halves and close games this year. And Georgia Tech, when King plays, has been a super feisty underdog in double-digit spots. If he goes, I don't know if Georgia Tech can win, but I think they can make it a game into the second half, and you never know on that one, but that's dependent on him.
If that game was in Atlanta, if that game was at Tech, then I'm thinking, all right, this is one. But I mean, dude, I think Kirby is something like 48-1 at Sanford, and that game being, I think it's a night game. Yeah, I mean,
it is Saturday night, 6:30.
That is, I talked to Josh Brooks, the athletic director. I mean, they have turned that into an experience, right? Like that right now, Sanford at night is and I think it was old school. The band would play and stuff, and it just didn't feel right. They brought in the lights, they brought in the fireworks, they brought in the whole concert experience there. The DJ plays more than the band. That thing is going to be lit because they also know it means something. And I mean, I think Carson Beck the last 2 weeks has been a little bit better as well.
Yeah, now I'll say that I got the full night game experience in Athens for Ole Miss Georgia last year, and you're telling no lies. I saw everything you're saying, and it was a real serious deal. My only beef, the Georgia fans. Look, every SEC fan base has annoying stuff that drives people crazy, but the barking at people, I mean, I don't know. I don't know where you are on that. I know everybody's got annoying stuff, but the bark,
it'll stop when somebody whoops somebody's ass when doing it. Whenever the grown-ass man gets out there and the buddy has to grab him by the belt. It's fine to do that to a certain extent until somebody just decides that they're going to just roundhouse Chun-Li kick somebody and be like, all right, we're good.
Yeah, I mean, I just
we're psychos here in the SEC, dude.
I love that. Look, I love that. Like I said, I mean, I go at it all the time with the LSU fan base because my relationship's down there, and I take it and honestly, I can deal with it. Even the tiger bait, none of that bothers me. Just the barking thing from Georgia, it irritates me a little bit. So you give Vandy a shot. Georgia Tech gonna be tough, especially with King out. With that being a night game. Some other ones. All right, non-SEC, man, Miami is an 11-point favorite at Syracuse, and I don't know how. Syracuse is 8-3. McCord is lava hot. Miami's defense can't stop anybody. And this game's up in that dome, which Syracuse has a weird home field advantage. Dude, I mean, Syracuse would win this football game, and it wouldn't shock me at all. And when you look at that situation, SMU's already clinched the ACC championship berth. If Miami loses at Syracuse, Clemson backdoors in, whether they beat South Carolina or not. But I feel like Miami is also extremely at risk Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are going to look at them beating Wake Forest's ass and be like, hey, man, what about that? I'm like, man, what did Wake have, especially late into the season? They actually, kind of got into a tussle with them a little bit early. But, yeah, I mean, like if you're talking like a game that like just sets up for like a 7-point or 10-point tease, I'm like that to tease them down because I think Syracuse is actually a live dog in that game.
Oh, yeah.
So I look at it, I'm like, you're going to get 11 points. If all of a sudden you could tease that up to like 18, dude, come on. How I mean, and kudos to Cam Ward if they get that done, but I'm not sold that defense is. And you're right. Can you imagine if all of a sudden Syracuse beats Miami and then you get to a situation where South Carolina beats Clemson? Then all of a sudden I think Clemson and SMU would play in the ACC championship game. And that would be good news for Ole Miss to at least have some kind of heartbeat because 2 bids from the ACC, it would screw the SEC getting 4 bids, truthfully.
No, I agree. But I think Miami's extremely vulnerable. And also a game script thing because I follow the gambling hard. Man, I've been hammering. I go first half against Miami every week. They get down every week, and like they were beating Wake by like 3 or 6 and a half. Every week their first halves are bad, and then Cam comes on in the second half. I think this is a spot Syracuse is going to be leading at half. Or they're like plus 230 money line first half, and then Cam Ward's going to have to try to bring him back in another thriller is what I think is coming in that game. And somebody's winning like 41-38 or 44-41. And
over-under's probably like, 70 in that game?
67, and it's too low. It's too low on that fast track. I'm telling you, Miami cannot stop them. When you watch Miami this year, it jumps off the screen how slow they are on defense. And, they're at the U, and they have an NIL budget. I don't understand why they're so slow on defense. It will never make sense to me. And I give Cam Ward all the credit in the world for dragging that team to 1 loss because I think they have like a top 30, top 35 roster at best.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me a little bit of LSU with Jaden Daniels last year in the fact of offensively they got a playmaker and quarterback that can kind of negate a bunch of the defensive woes. But, I mean, that's what it is. I mean, but that could be good enough. When you play in the ACC, I just don't think it's top to bottom that mid-tier and lower tier of the ACC is the same as a mid-tier or the lower tier of the SEC right now. But that's all the reason why they're only going to get 1 or 2 spots in, truthfully.
Yeah, so looking at it, ACC, the only way they can really get 2, I guess, is is 2-loss SMU or 2-loss Miami going to get a second bid if somebody loses the ACC championship? Is that their only spot?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the only way that ends up happening is if you get Miami that wins against Syracuse, SMU and Miami play in the ACC championship game. It's a competitive game, and then Miami ends up winning it. So Miami would get the bid, and SMU, because if you look at SMU, you got to think of SMU the same way you look at Notre Dame. The strength of schedule is almost identical, and the difference is Notre Dame had a bad loss, horrible loss as a 28-point favorite against Northern Illinois, whereas the loss that SMU would have is to a pretty decent BYU squad.
Yeah, week 2 as well.
Yeah, and how much are you going to penalize them for playing in the ACC championship game? So that in the league office in Charlotte for ACC, that's probably the best case scenario that happens for them.
Yeah, and SMU just locked up Rhett Lashley. Smart move. That's actually a really good job because they've got huge NIL money, and you're in Dallas, and you can recruit and get the portal. I thought that was smart because him being an Arkansas guy, he would be an obvious target for Arkansas. But I think SMU's a better job, to be honest.
Well, again, yeah, I mean, if you're sitting there, if you've got the same amount of money, like it used to be facility money, and I don't know how much. I mean, I think facilities play a role, but at the end of the day, Mintzy, if you're a 17-year-old kid and you're a 4-star or 5-star kid, would you rather get paid a couple $100,000 or the fact that this weight room is a little bit nicer than the other weight room? Like, I mean, all the facilities are pretty good right now. I'd much rather say, give me the bag. And if Lashley and those guys can do it, and he can prove that he can go in there and play a weaker schedule and make it to the college football playoff as opposed to going to Arkansas or wherever he might go, and having to face the murderer's row that Georgia and Ole Miss and LSU and all those guys face, might be the path of least resistance for him.
Yeah, and also in this current day and age with this transfer portal thing, man, just being in Dallas and Highland Park, you're going to be able, with money, you could just poach transfers there. That's a super, positive place to transfer to. And I don't know. And that would be fascinating. If they play Miami, Lashley was on that Miami staff. They have 9 Miami transfers, so that would be wild if you had SMU Miami with that. All right, we got to get to this Texas A&M game because I got a lot to say here, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. I'm just, we're laying it out here. We're talking about Syracuse winning, Vandy winning. This is Cass. I love A&M. Don't even love. They lost as a road favorite. Now they're a 6-point home dog. They're plus 195 money line. The atmosphere, you just said it. The atmospheres. This is going to be the craziest atmosphere. I saw what it was like for the LSU A&M game a few weeks ago. This is going to be even more than that. And somehow A&M, they were 17-1 to win the SEC before last week, and they move up to 8-1 with a loss because of Bama losing, and A&M still has a path to the SEC championship, which is bananas. But I look at Texas. Look, I know they're a really good football team. I'm not here to crap on them. But I see some real stuff I'm concerned about. Their running game's not that good. Ewers in that mobile. It's like every time you think he's good, he turns it over or gets hurt. I do think they have a good defense, but man, on the road at A&M, I think this is like a pick-'em game, and Texas is laying 6. Well, I want to hear what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and we got to double check too to make sure Quinn is 100%. Got banged up in that last game against Kentucky. I know there was an MRI. I assume it'll come back here, but you might see a little bit of Arch Manning in this game, which frankly, honestly, at some point, if he's not 100%, I'm worried because you look at what Georgia absolutely spanked that offensive line for Georgia or for Texas up in Austin earlier this year. So that's going to be really the matchup of Quinn's inability. And if he's not 100% and can't kind of move inside the pocket with A&M's front seven, and I'm pissed off, not because I love A&M or because I love Auburn or whatnot, but man, I really wanted A&M to win that game. If for no other reason, it set up even more of a hype. I remember vividly LSU versus Alabama in 2011. It was the game of the century. Everybody was looking at it. It was two heavyweights, fighting each other. And I felt like the Elko situation, those guys losing that game, it felt very Jimbo Fisher-esque to an Auburn team who I think is okay. I don't think they're great, and Jordan-Hare is a weird-ass place to play. But, man, I really wish that A&M would have won that game over on Saturday.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but the fact that they got bailed out by Bama losing, they're still planning to go to the SEC championship game. And now we're going down the conspiracy rabbit hole. Hear me out. All right, you're going to laugh. This may be the stupidest thing I've ever said. No, this isn't the stupidest thing I've ever said. Let's be real. All right. I think A&M, for real, I really think they could win the SEC championship. And I know that's crazy with them having 3 losses, and they just lost to South Carolina and Auburn. But if they win against Texas as a home dog, they play Georgia and Atlanta. And hear me out on that. The reason I would like them against Georgia is the same reason Bama beat Georgia last year on that turf. Reed running on that turf and his mobility is a massive edge in the Dome game. And I think A&M would have a shot against Georgia in that game. They're 8-1 to win the SEC, so I don't know if that's quite enough of a price when they're plus 195 money line, and they'd probably be plus 250 against Georgia. But the other thing, people are going to laugh so hard. I think I'm going to put in an $80 bet on A&M 150-1 today. Because if they somehow won these next 2, they'd have a bye in the playoff. I don't think they can win the national title, but if you got them 150-1 and they got a bye in the playoff, you'd be happy to have the ticket.
Yeah, but here's the deal. I don't know if there's necessarily a team that can get in right now. I remember, a couple of years ago, Cincinnati in the 4-team playoff got in, and there was no fucking way that they were going to win a national championship.
No.
It was just you knew it, and especially right for the jump where they put in a 3-man front against Alabama. You're like, buddy, what are we doing here? And so I think that was part of the situation. but here, is there a team that you just really don't feel that's live? Like, especially from if an SEC team gets in, can you see them just not being able to compete? I don't. Like,
No, I think we're in a spot.
Ohio State winning. I don't know if I could see a Big 12 team winning.
I definitely can't. They're too soft at the line of scrimmage.
No, and so for me, and the same thing with the ACC, I'm like, if an SEC squad is able to do that, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility you could win a couple of games.
Yeah. So look, I'm looking at it right now. Odds to win it. It's okay. Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon, and Texas are all less than 5-1. So none of them. I don't think any of them have value. Then it's Notre Dame 15-1, Penn State 18-1, Tennessee 22-1, Miami 30-1, SMU 35, Bama 40. The long shots that are interesting, I'm telling you, the A&M 150-1. Let me hear me out, because people are going to be like, "Oh, Mintz thinks A&M's going to win the national title." I don't think that. I think they could literally win. They could beat Texas at home, and I think they might could upset Georgia and Atlanta, and then you'd have a bye to the quarters. And if they could win that quarterfinal game, if you got them 150-1 in the semifinals, it's hedge time. That's my theory on it.
No, I mean, I don't mind that play whatsoever. Now, again, I think Texas wins that game.
Okay.
And I think people are going to look at Texas the way they looked at Indiana and say, well, they haven't played anybody worth a shit all season long, and look what happens when they finally play somebody. I've been down to Austin. I've seen that team in spring. I saw them last year. I've talked to Sark. I've spent some time around that program. That's a legit team. And so I think everybody's like, oh, well, they're all caught up in this. They haven't played anybody, and they're not good, and wait until they play somebody with the pulse, and look what happened to Georgia. Like, I get it. And I still think that Sark is smart enough to understand the issues that they had on the offensive line against Georgia. They understand how to combat that against A&M. I actually do like Texas to win that game. Now, I think it could be like a 31-28 Texas victory, but I think they make it easy. That ends up being Texas in Georgia, which, holy hell, would be an unbelievable SEC championship game.
The Texas thing, I'll say this. Everybody's giving them crap because their schedule. They played an SEC schedule, and they played at the defending national champion in Michigan non-conference. You can't fault Texas for that. Like, this is their first year in the SEC, right, and they made a point to go to Michigan and the SEC schedule. It just broke where Oklahoma was struggling, and they caught Florida's third stringer. So I don't think you can really fault them for that, because it wasn't like they played. I mean, like Ole Miss played no one non-conference. I mean, at least Texas tried.
They have the dudes. Like, you look at Indiana and even Ohio State. There was parts of that time where you're like, all right, they look differently. And I see Texas, and in years past, man, I thought Texas at some point when they were in the Big 12, there were years where the Texas is back, and I'm like, dude, this team is not. It's because you're playing in a weak Big 12, and it's the brand. You look at Texas, and you put an Ohio State jersey on them, or a Georgia jersey on them, or Alabama jersey on them, and you're like, yep, that's a national championship team. And the fact that also, too, if Quinn's not 100%, you have a backup quarterback that can play. I'm not saying he's as good yet as Quinn. There's no quarterback controversy there. Like, I just think that they're super, super deep. And that wide receiver core, my God, that wide receiver core is so freaking loaded. It's out of control.
Yeah, I am curious to see if even if Quinn plays, if they use Arch a series or two just to use his legs a little bit to give him a different wrinkle in this A&M game. Okay, I want to ask about the South Carolina. We kind of touch on for a second. This playoff thing, hypothetically, what if South Carolina comes out and like beats Clemson by 2 or 3 touchdowns in their home field, like dominant effort, because they're hot right now. And when you watch South Carolina, man, Sellers, the redshirt freshman quarterback, he's hard to get on the ground. I mean, he is very tough to tackle. And they got him and Sanders going in the running game with that front seven. Like, they got, I don't know, that was the one team I was wrong on preseason. But, like, if they beat Clemson by 2 touchdowns, I feel like that momentum into year might boost them over Ole Miss and Bama if there's like a, but even though they lost to both of them.
Yeah, they can't. The problem is that they can't get over that. I mean, you go back and look at Bama, they should have won that game. Lenore Sellers hits any type of 2-point conversion there late, and even after the onside kick, they had a chance. But I mean, what South Carolina can't get over is South Carolina, Ole Miss beating them in Williams-Brice by 24. Like, there's no way. Like, as much as I love South Carolina and they're as hot as anybody, and they got absolutely screwed by the officials in the LSU game. Like, there's no doubt about that. They should have only 2 losses on the season. But if I'm a committee member and I go, I'm in between, let's say chaos happens, and they would need Vanderbilt to lose or Vanderbilt to beat Tennessee. You got to get Tennessee out of there.
The Vandy Tennessee game is the linchpin to the chaos this weekend. Right. That's the one.
But if I got to pick, if I'm the committee and I'm sitting there going, all right, let's compare these two somehow, some way, and it's South Carolina and Ole Miss, there is no way in hell a committee is going to say, I'm going to pick the team that lost by 24 at home. So, again, it has to be a package deal. If South Carolina's getting in, Ole Miss got in. There's no doubt about in my mind that that's the case. And
that makes sense. But the one argument against that is that there's always been a thing in college football you want to lose earlier in the year. And like Ole Miss and Bama with these late losses, if South Carolina closes strong, I mean, I know what you're saying. What you're saying makes total sense. But it always seems like
I literally will throw my I love Shane Beamer. I love this team. I think they're as hot as anybody, and they're a team right now that I think could give hell to anybody. Like, I take South Carolina. You put South Carolina in the ACC, they're winning that thing. You put South Carolina in the Big 12, they're winning that thing. You put South Carolina right now, I'd take them against basically anybody not named Oregon or Ohio State. That's what I'm a firm believer in Shane Beamer's squad. But there's no way you could put them in the committee. The committee would even be able to answer that question is, how in the world did you lose by 24 at home? And we're going to take you. Like, that's a bridge too far even for me.
I want to talk about Alabama-Auburn for a second. Bama 11.5-point favorite. If this game was at Auburn, I mean, I really think Auburn would win. I mean, Freeze almost got them last year. Freeze is a notorious, like, say what you will about Hugh Freeze, one of the best underdog coaches of all time. Always gets his guys up, and they always fight in this spot. It being in Tuscaloosa, Auburn hadn't won. I don't think Auburn's won there since Cam Newton won there in that game where they were down 24-0 and came back the year they won the title in 2010 or whatever. What do you think about this Bama Auburn?
I mean, I think it reminds me a little bit of Syracuse and Miami in the fact of, like, you're talking about 11-point favorite type deal. The thing is I think Lawson may be out for Alabama. So I mean, if that's the case, if he ends up being out, like what happens with that defense right now? Auburn has as good of vibes as anybody. I mean, you look at like the vibe factor right now, probably Florida and Auburn have as good of vibes as anybody in the country. And so they're looking to play spoiler right now. I think they're live because I want to see what Kalen Boer can do about like making sure 2 weeks in a row don't beat you. And the fact that you got embarrassed that way. And I think Jalen Milroe is more of, I don't want to call it a vibes player, but just like, hey, when things are going well, like, and when things are going bad, it kind of reminds me of like Carmelo Anthony used to be that way when I covered him with the Nuggets. Like when Carmelo was locked in, you couldn't stop him. But he also had games in which he would you're like, what in the world's going on? I can see that happen with Jalen Milroe because that didn't look fixable with Milroe, right? Like they looked at they had a game plan. And what does Auburn do well? Mintzy, they stopped the run pretty damn well. So again, this is one of those. Like, if I could tease Syracuse up along with Auburn up, give me that two-team teaser in a heartbeat.
Yeah, the Auburn thing, man. I'll say this. If you play Bama, you have to spy on Milroe. You just can't let him beat you with your legs like he did to LSU the last 2 years. If he beats you throwing the ball, then God bless. But, that's the one thing that makes him unique. I know he's good at hitting deep balls, Deron Williams, and he'll hit some, but he's not a consistent passer, especially on the mid-range stuff. He's a good deep ball thrower.
And Alabama struggled to stop the run. They struggled to stop Jackson Arnold in Oklahoma running the ball right now. Jarquez, I mean, it's a trouble spot right now, which would cause even more chaos. So I think Auburn is absolutely a live dog in that one.
So I guess for the Ole Miss thing, you gotta Vandy beating Tennessee is the most important. I mean, if Tennessee beats Vandy, all of it's over. But if Tennessee loses to Vandy, then man, you never know. You're like you said. I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff watching South Carolina, Clemson. And then the other stuff I was going to mention, I mentioned the A&M thing that was crazy. A couple of conference bets. Clemson 6-1 to win the ACC right now. I really think Syracuse can beat Miami. I think it's like a coin. Like Miami should be like a 3-point favorite, and they're favored by 11. If Syracuse beats Miami, that ACC championship game, I believe, is in your hometown of Charlotte, correct?
Yeah, it is.
That's like a home game for Clemson. If that's what happens.
Yeah, but again, it's also a weak ass home crowd too. Like ACC championship normally has like 50,000 like ticket or in there, so it's not going to feel like an actual real monster game. Like Georgia Clemson a couple of years ago to open up the season, that felt huge over there in Charlotte. That's not going to be the case against SMU. So I mean, at 6, if they're 6-1, I don't think there's any value in that because I damn sure think that they could lose, either one of those games, and they still need a little bit of help to happen. So there's just no value in Clemson at 6-1 for the ACC.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm just always looking at these. I'm a conspiracy odds guy. They I don't think 8-1.
Well, like the A&M thing is shocking to me, right? Like I look at it and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like that to me is if you're going to take a flyer on something, that's the flyer. Like
because they control. They actually could. They're the only one that controls their own destiny. That's
yeah. With Clemson, you need to have other things happen, and that's just too much of an inside straight to draw out.
Yeah. The other crazy one I like that we won't spend any time on because nobody cares. But South Alabama 13-1 Sun Belt. I actually think there's a path to on the flyer thing. Any other? Oh yeah. Do you think Ohio State runs it up on Michigan, or can Michigan's defense keep them in it for a little bit?
I mean, again, I don't know, don't care. I mean, it's amazing that this game right now has become such a afterthought of Harbaugh leaving and all that talent. And listen, they'll bring more back, arguably for one more year, I would imagine. But they're going to have to fix that. But I will say this: can you imagine if Ryan Day somehow lost that game? I mean, like after all the stuff and the $20 million payroll, like. Ryan Day's out to prove a damn point in this one. They'd still be a college football playoff team, but my God, the amount of pressure that would be on Ryan Day if they lost to Michigan, backdoored their way into the college football playoff and lost their first round playoff game. I don't know whose seat would be hotter, Ryan Day or Moore over there at Michigan.
Yeah, no, I think I feel like they'll Ohio State will win. I'm just curious. Like Ohio State's had a lot of slow first halves, and then they pull away in the second half. That's what they've been doing all year, and I can see that in this game. Well,
By the
Peter,
way, is there any team real quick is there any major college football program with the coach in a hot seat this year? Because I don't think Norvell is as
no. Norvell's got a huge buyout, and they just went undefeated. He's good.
Brian Kelly's not. Like,
no, do you consider Pitt? Do you consider Arkansas major, Pittman? I mean, I don't know if it's major.
I don't know this to be the case. I could see Pittman deciding that if all of a sudden they lose at the end of the season to Missouri and the vibes just aren't good, that him and Hunter Yurachek go, you know what, go get hip surgery, go relax, we'll work out a deal. You can be a part of the athletic department or whatever. I could see maybe Pittman walking away, even though, I mean, that's the only way I could really see it. But I don't think that this will be the first time in a long time, Mintzy, that there hasn't been like Jimmy Sexton's Christmas where he could leverage some big-time Power 4 jobs against each other.
Yeah, I don't think you mentioned Moore at Michigan. I think Moore's safe because this was a big rebuild year after all the stuff that happened with Harbaugh winning the title and the fact that they just got Bryce Underwood. I feel like he's at least got another year or two. I don't think that's
Deion's the only one that I think, I mean, I think Colorado might become open just because I think Deion heads to the NFL somewhere.
The Deion and Shador Raiders thing. I mean, in Vegas. I mean,
why would you not? If you're Deion Sanders, get the hell out of college. I've talked to people at Colorado. They don't want him there anyway. Despite
this is a 2-year thing. You're right. He's not. He burned it.
No, I mean it is what it is. They got what they needed. Everybody benefited, but they're ready to move on, and they expect him to probably move on. If you're Deion, there's never been a time to where you and Shador could go to the NFL together, and then guess what? You're going to get a boatload of money, and at the same point, if it doesn't work out, guess what? Do you know how long the line would be to get Deion Sanders back into college football? Like it's a free game for Deion to go to the NFL. He'd be idiotic not to go to the NFL next year.
Yeah, and just his strategy. He's coaching his son. I don't know. I feel like what he's doing is like, and you got to give him credit. I mean, Colorado's won 11 2 years ago, but it's not a long term.
It worked.
No.
Yeah.
Well, Well, Peter, this was awesome. We're about to get out of here. I want to say thank you for giving us some time. Where'd you say you're heading? Oh, you're going to just be in the studio?
Yeah, I'll be in studio, man. So I'll be watching all the games with Doring and Ben Watson over there on the SEC network.
Are you going to the SEC champion? Are you going to be in Atlanta next weekend?
I will be. Yeah, always a good event, man. And then it'll be interesting to see too if A&M got there, like a loss drops them out. I mean, I love this freaking season this year. I mean, say what you want. And the transfer portal, last thing, has saved college football. Because think about how many kids normally that would just opt out or not play. They want to put tape on for their next team. So I think the transfer portal, as much as the coaches bitch about it, has been good for the sport.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Wake Up Mintzy. Shout out Stella Blue and Dude Wipes. Next show will be next Tuesday because our office is closed tomorrow. I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and follow Peter at Peter Burns ESPN. Love having him on. Love our relationship. Appreciate you.
See you, buddy.
All right, we're going to get out of here. Thanks again to Dude Wipes and Stella Blue and Tyler Moody for holding down the fort in Louisiana. We'll see you guys next week. Man, I love fall. The leaves are changing, football, and Stella Blue coffee. And this season, maple pumpkin pie. But my morning routine would not be complete without Dumpkin Spice Dude Wipes.
Oh, Mintzy, let it rip.
Cheers, furry fellas. Coffee that fuels you, wipes that clean you.